What is going on, everybody? James Hancock here, and back to review The Expendables 4, a movie where I had perhaps allowed myself in a naive way to get excited for it in advance just because I'm such a massive fan of all the stars involved. I mean, most of the actors in this franchise have been giving me a lot of joy on the big screen my entire life. I mean, a lot of these guys, they're in their fucking 70s now, although this movie does have a lot of new blood, but at the risk of coming across like one of the douchey hipsters that I'm sure going to be lining up in droves to pile on this movie and make fun of it and like sharpen their knives and have a lot of fun at its expense, even though I don't want to be part of that group, I have to acknowledge that this movie is pretty rotten. Easily the weakest of the four, although I'd have to revisit all of them in a row to really make a fair comparison because these movies, I like the franchise, I like the stars, I don't really like the movies, although I think Sylvester Stallone did the best job of all the directors involved with the way he handled the first one, just giving life to a franchise in the first place. Everybody thinks of Sly Stallone as being this massive movie star who's been around since the 70s, but he's written and directed shitloads of movies, many of which I've seen many times, like Rocky III and Rocky IV. I'm a big fan of Sly Stallone just as a storyteller, as a filmmaker, so I think he deserves all the credit in the world for coming up with this concept, which is basically like watching like the Rolling Stones play. Like, would I prefer to see the Rolling Stones play in 1973? Of course. But if someone gives me a ticket to go see them now, I'll still go, and I feel the same way about Sly Stallone and Dolph Lundgren and Randy Couture's not nearly as old as those guys, and nor is Jason Statham. But let me be clear, I am no snob when it comes to reviewing or discussing or digesting or just embracing crappy action movies. I mean, we all have our personal Hall of Fame of our all-time favorite action movies or adventure movies or martial arts movies or whatever the case might be. I fucking love the action genre and it'll never go away. But if you're a diehard action fan, you also have like your Hall of Shame, the movies that are horrendous, that are terrible, where you'll watch the whole thing even though it's a 2-hour piece of shit just because it has one outrageous scene where like, oh my god, like that scene is fucking crazy. I love this movie. Expendables 4 is one of those movies where it's horrible, but it never really gives us a reason to be there unless you just absolutely love being in the same room as these stars. So let's talk about who's in this movie and who is not. This also includes 50 Cent, Megan Fox, Tony Jaa, Iko Uwais, I think I'm saying his name correctly, Jason Scipio, Levi Tran, and Andy Garcia. And sadly, a couple familiar faces are missing. There's no Wesley Snipes. There's no Arnold Schwarzenegger. There's no Harrison Ford. After number 3, I was like, hell yeah. Keep Wesley Snipes and Harrison Ford and Arnold Schwarzenegger around, because even though number 3 was kind of a terrible movie as well, there was a really special moment where suddenly the cavalry arrives in the form of Harrison Ford flying a goddamn helicopter with Arnold Schwarzenegger like on a Gatling gun. I was like, oh my god, it's like Han Solo and Dutch from Predator have teamed up to save the day. And even though the scene was kind of hammy and kind of silly, I had the world's biggest smile on my face because I was getting to see Han Solo in a cockpit again, fucking people up. In my opinion, this movie delivered not one single scene that I would argue would compel someone to have to go to the theater and pay for the privilege of seeing it on the big screen. But let's face it, I'm a sucker for all these actors. If they come out in wheelchairs in 20 years with like drool bibs and like hand out screenplays and read Steel Magnolias to each other, like I will still show up. Like they've got me on the hook. I love, and at the end of this video, I'm going to include a brief list of some of my favorite action movies starring some of the talent involved. But I think the fact that it's been 9 years since the last one, you can see how this whole franchise has kind of fallen to pieces. And in spite of the movie reportedly having a $100 million budget, everything about it just feels cheap, disposable, sloppy, like hastily put together. It almost feels like whoever was directing the movie, and I'll go ahead and throw them under the bus, Scott Waugh, but it's almost like he was like just directing with his eyes closed and kind of hoping that in the editing room it would all somehow come together. But it struck me as amateur. And when you've got a cast like this, I feel like that's just such a huge missed opportunity. Because imagine if you had a pretty good script and a pretty good director, and then you line up all this amazing talent. Well, you might have one of the coolest fucking action movies ever made, and it drives me crazy that you can get all these legends but fail in the most fundamental building blocks of making a great action movie. Namely, you need a kick-ass story, a kick-ass script, and a kick-ass director. It's hard to think of one classic action movie where you don't have a phenomenal filmmaker at the helm. And one of the reasons I'd kind of foolishly allowed myself to get excited for this movie is that I love the ad campaign, because in the trailer, they kept showing these quotes from social media where people are saying, like, please make it R-rated, like, go back to the R rating of the first one, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, all right, if they're leaning into the fact that this is going to be a hard R action movie, they've got my money, I'll show up. But when I was watching this movie, what it really felt like they had done is they took a crummy PG-13 like fake action movie and then digitally added in a little blood splatter or a few cutthroats or a few like bloody squibs. But digital blood does nothing for me. I need the real, genuine article. I grew up in the 80s where like filmmakers like Paul Verhoeven would have like 100 fist-sized squibs explode out of people's chests then and there. It looked fucking real. It was almost too real. And everything about this flick just feels fake. And it does this weird thing where it's trying to make it huge and big and grand and epic, but they don't quite have the money for that. And so they keep taking all these shortcuts that make it feel small and inexpensive. Like when I see a digital plane flying through the sky with digital fire coming out of it, with digital missiles hitting it, it's not thrilling. It's not exciting. What I would prefer, just give me Sly Stallone like in a warehouse beating the fuck out of people, which is very cheap to shoot, and it'd be much more compelling and much more exciting. A perfect example would be the climax of Expendables 3, where Sly Stallone and Mel Gibson are just snarling at each other and glaring at each other and like bringing all that intensity from their decades of filmmaking, and they're just like, ah! Like that was way more entertaining than most of Expendables 3. But yeah, there are just so many scenes in this where you can tell it's just like the crummiest blue screen and or green screen technology imaginable with these fake backgrounds. You're like, I cannot believe that y'all would have the audacity, like the balls to put this on the screen and accept money for the privilege of watching it. But I think all the crummy special effects would be forgivable if this movie had any of the humor or any of the charm of some of the previous entries. And I'm not claiming that the previous 3 movies are like my favorite action movies, but they do have moments where I love the characters, I love the camaraderie, I love the shit talking, I love just that bond that they all share. This movie almost feels like they tried to bleed it or drain it of anything resembling camaraderie or chemistry, and that was just infuriating because that's also inexpensive to shoot. You just put a bunch of charming actors in the room and just turn them loose. Just give them something funny to talk about and they'll be off to the races. So if you're a fan of these flicks, you know what Dolph Lundgren brings to the table, you know what Randy Couture brings to the table, you know what Jason Statham and Sly Stallone bring to the table, but you might be asking yourself, what do the newcomers bring to the table? And I would argue, in spite of the fact that many of these are legends in their own time with years of incredible filmmaking behind them, they brought very little to the table. I mean, Tony fucking Jaa, when Ong Bak came out like 20 years ago, people justifiably lost their minds. I don't think people had ever really like seen Muay Thai in cinematic form before. And obviously, if you follow Muay Thai as a sport or you enjoy watching Muay Thai and MMA, you're going to see a lot of, kind of classic fundamental Muay Thai. But it was cool to see an actor lean into the style of Muay Thai, but make it cinematic and big and grand. And he's been doing all kinds of crazy shit for like the last 20 years, and I'm a huge fan. Or Iko Uwais. I mean, the Raid movies, he's done a lot of things since then, but Raid 1 and 2 were a true eye-opener for most people, where I think most people were totally unaware that there was like an action filmmaking culture of any kind in Indonesia, and suddenly everybody got their eyes opened. And I should also acknowledge that he was in The Night Comes For Us, my favorite action flick of the last 10 years. And while it's nothing new having girls on the team of the Expendables, famously Ronda Rousey was on the team back in 2014, back when she was just breaking people's elbows left and right in the world of MMA before she became a professional wrestler. But this flick gives us Megan Fox as Gina or Gina. I don't know if that's supposed to be sexually suggestive or not, but she plays a huge role in this. And I don't think I've ever seen somebody who looks more dazzling on screen, but at the same time who also appears more bored by the lines that they're reading. It's almost like she took like a fistful of Xanax every day before walking on the set and was like, oh my God, like this movie is so boring and stupid. Like, why am I here? But I mean, she looks like $1 million, and Jason Statham is justifiably turned on in some of their makeout scenes. But their love-hate relationship and their battle of the sexes and their constant game of one-upsmanship, trying to see like who's the biggest, baddest motherfucker in the room, it gets real tired, real old, real quickly. So if, like me, you're thinking about getting lured in due to the prospect of the R rating, don't be fooled, because I feel like an R rating is about more than just a few splatter effects or a few slit throats. Making a hard R movie is an attitude. And obviously, like, the people that are rating the movies are not the people that are making the movies, but when you set out to make a movie that is more or less uncensored, like, include gratuitous nudity, include torture, include like genuinely reprehensible behavior, include really foul language, like language where like parents are going to reach over and cover their kids' ears. There are a few lines in here about golden showers that just feel so tame and so cautious and so stupid. I'm like, go back to the 1980s, watch some real R-rated movies. We're like, oh my God, I can't believe that they would actually put this in action movies. Like watch an Andy Sidaris action movie. Andy Sidaris made a ton of action movies that are just wildly entertaining, that mostly consist of like girls with giant breasts and machine guns fucking people up. They are delightful. Like start with Malibu Express. I mean, if you want an R rating, like have Jason Statham and Megan Fox skin off and fuck the shit out of each other. There is your R rating. The rather chaste, innocent makeout scene between the two of them doesn't cut it. But never at any point does this movie feel like it's really going for it or going for the jugular or trying to give us a really irreverent, outrageous, kick-ass, hard R action experience. So you might be asking yourself, how did 9 years of work result in such a forgettable movie? And I looked on Wikipedia, and there's actually an alarming amount of information on the behind-the-scenes chaos on what led us to this point. And that when I see a movie that's been in development for this long, and like the final product is this underwhelming, I'm just like, y'all spent so much money and just so much time and energy making this fucking thing. Like, couldn't you have just injected a little bit of life into it along the way? Or did it just become such a laborious process that everybody just said, fuck it, let's just get through it so we can move on to other things? But I'm going to read you a few highlights from the Wikipedia entry just so you know how this film came to be. After The Expendables 3 underperformed at the box office, the future of the series was left in doubt and production stalled over several years. By November 2014, it was announced that the project is being developed with intent to retain its R rating like the first two films. In December 2016, Sylvester Stallone announced that the fourth installment will be the final film in the series, while a scheduled tentative release date was set for 2018. By March 2017, Stallone had left the project and the franchise due to creative differences over the script and direction for continuing the franchise. In January 2018, after vocal support from other cast members, including Arnold Schwarzenegger, Stallone announced his return to the series with a post to his social media platforms confirming new developments on the fourth movie. By August 2020, Vertice Cine announced their involvement as a production studio on the movie alongside Lionsgate and Millennium Films. They also revealed that Patrick Hughes will return to the series as director. In November 2020, the president of Millennium Media, Jeffrey Greenstein, stated that the studio is continuing to work on The Expendables 4 after various delays within the industry worldwide due to the COVID-19 pandemic. In August 2021, The Hollywood Reporter reported that Scott Waugh would be directing the film, replacing Hughes, as well as Statham serving as a producer of the film, while Stallone confirmed his involvement with the project and that The Expendables 4 was the same project as The Expendables: A Christmas Story, previously reported as a spin-off, but in fact the film's working title during development. Stallone further stated that the production was set to commence in October that year. According to Dolph Lundgren, the film had a budget of $100 million. And as you're watching it, you will see all the kind of the echoes and leftovers from when it was a spin-off movie called A Christmas Story, because like half the movie is like Jason Statham's solo adventure where it's like, no, the whole point of the Expendables is that you have an ensemble cast working together, but a lot of this movie is the Jason Statham show, which I would not have any problem with watching just like a Jason Statham action flick, but it's not Jason Statham. This is The Expendables. Give me an ensemble story. And I'm going to skip the section on screenwriters because none of the writers involved did a goddamn thing when it comes to actually injecting character and life and personality into the story. But the section on casting is fascinating when you see just how much chaos there was behind the scenes. Over the years, multiple actors reported interest or claimed their approach to star in a fourth installment. In March 2014, Pierce Brosnan stated he had agreed with producer Avi Lerner to star in a fourth installment. By April of the same year, Sly Stallone revealed his first choice for the villain was Jack Nicholson, while mentioning his interest in convincing Clint Eastwood to join the production. According to Jackie Chan, he was approached to star in the film by Stallone, but was unsure about having limited screen time in an ensemble film, which is why he had turned down roles in the previous two entries. Dwayne Johnson publicly expressed interest to play a villainous character in a new installment during a 2014 Q&A and reiterated his interest to join the series in 2022. In May 2015, Hulk Hogan claimed he was in talks with Stallone to play the film's main villain. In June 2020, Jean-Claude Van Damme expressed interest in returning to the franchise, publicly pitching his idea of playing Claude Villain, the brother to his villain character Jean Villain from The Expendables 2. Despite discontent with how his character was handled in The Expendables 3, Arnold Schwarzenegger proclaimed he was interested in returning to the series if he liked the script. However, in 2023, Schwarzenegger confirmed he would not be returning to the franchise, citing a general disinterest. And I'm going to skip ahead to Terry Crews, who had starred in all previous films, refused to appear in any new series after claiming he was sexually assaulted by Stallone's agent, Adam Venett, alleging he was pressured by producer Avi Lerner to drop the case if he wanted to stay in the series. I mean, as someone who's a fan of Terry Crews, I would have said, drop the agent, keep Terry Crews in the movie, but we got the cast that we got. I would have loved to have seen Jackie Chan join the cast at one point. I feel like Jet Li got a little underserved by his involvement in the franchise, but I just like seeing these actors work. And it's a reminder to all the youngins out there that these guys exist and that they have giant bodies of work to watch. So I think this movie is going to flop and flop hard, that the franchise will be gone, but I'm going to wrap up this video with some recommendations for some good movies featuring the cast members involved. And obviously I will not be providing a comprehensive list covering their entire careers, but I do just want to end this video on a positive note. So Sly Stallone, throw a dart. The first 4 Rockies and First Blood were major parts of my childhood, so you really can't go wrong with those. But yeah, Sly Stallone. He's got a long, legendary career. But let's talk Jason Statham. Maybe it's a cheesy kind of go-to answer, but Snatch. I'm going to say Snatch is the one to watch. It's not even a martial arts movie or an action movie. It's got action in it, but I think that might be Jason Statham's finest hour on screen. 50 Cent. I don't know if I've ever seen 50 Cent in a movie. I've been in a lot of clubs where his music's playing and that sort of thing. But as an actor, I didn't see Get Rich or Die Trying. I don't think I've seen his action movies. So y'all tell me, what are the good 50 Cent action flicks? But Megan Fox, it's a no-brainer. Check out Jennifer's Body. I mean, everybody knows it from Transformers, but it was Jennifer's Body that really put her on my radar. Dolph Lundgren, Showdown at Little Tokyo has been on my to-do list my entire life, but I still have not seen it, where he co-stars with Brandon Lee. But obviously, Rocky IV is the one to see. Tony Jaa, check out Ambach. Iko Uwais, check out The Night Comes For Us, and obviously The Raid 1 and 2. Andy Garcia, I mean, he's got a shitload of good ones, but maybe Things to Do in Denver When You're Dead. I feel like that's a cool gangster flick. It's not an action movie, but it's got action in it. It's got shitloads of violence in it. And he's fantastic in it. And he gets to be the star, the lead of a great ensemble cast. So I'll give that recommendation for Andy Garcia. And sorry, I was mispronouncing his name because I'm looking at Randy Couture's name in the cast. Randy Couture. Just watch the fights. Watch his fights with Chuck Liddell. He had 3 of them. Watch his fight with Tim Sylvia. Watch his fights. I mean, even when he's on the receiving end of a beatdown, like when he fought Brock Lesnar. But go back and watch his UFC career. You will be deliriously entertained. So I think that's all I've got to say about this particular movie. I'm sorry I don't have better news to report, but I hope you've gotten at least some good recommendations from my coverage of this flick. But it's time for me to wrap this up, because starting tomorrow I have all my press screenings for the New York Film Festival, meaning that for the next couple of weeks I'm going to be just inundated with independent films and foreign films, and hopefully I'll have some cool reviews for y'all in the very near future. But I hope you enjoyed this video. If so, hit that notification bell, the like button, the subscribe button. You know the drill, and hunt me down on social media at Colbrax if you want to tell me that I've got this movie totally wrong and that I'm overlooking an action masterpiece. But I hope everybody has a great weekend, but more importantly, as always, onwards and upwards.